We are recording. Off we go. Welcome, everyone. This is week 3 of the Make It Club's Make Your Brand Sprint. Just before we dive in, first, the washrooms are located in the safety of your own home or office, perhaps upstairs or just down the hall. This is a safe space. I don't believe in stupid questions. Please come off mute or pop your question in the chat. We are recording. Hello, if you are watching on the replay. And the main handout we are working with right now is the Canva brand kit file. And please let me know if you have any trouble accessing this, also in the dashboard. We are trucking along in the course. Oh, I think we've just lost somebody, but that's okay. We're trucking along in the course. We are going to be halfway through after today's class. I have no idea where that time is going, but we're almost halfway through. Today, we're going to be talking about brand fonts. So as usual today, I'm going to explain some concepts and the process of deciding what your brand fonts are going to be. I'm going to give you some time in class to make that choice. And then I'm going to be available for questions and feedback at the end of class if anyone wants to sit on the hot seat, and we can go through your stuff. It gets pretty hot this summer. Okay, so let's dive right into the presentation portion. Okay, so much like choosing colors, there's a short, like 3-step, I say short, I didn't say easy, short 3-step process to choosing what your brand fonts are going to be. The goal is for us to actually have 2 fonts. And from those 2 fonts, we're going to make 3 font styles. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute. We want to make sure that the fonts we're choosing are usable depending on where you need to use them, website, Canva, Google, etc. And that, you know, it's they're accessible so that, you know, people with screen readers and more to do with websites than anything else, that, you know, folks can read what you are posting. Anybody have any questions so far about the process? Say similar to colors, we'll start with the fonts and the feelings. So very similar to colors, there is a place where art and science meet, and it's font psychology. So the type of fonts that you choose can make a big difference as to how you are coming across. And I have a little bit of further reading on this. There's a link in your brand kit. There's a really good Canva article that goes into depth about different kind of fonts and psychology. But for our purposes, I've given you this chart in your Canva brand kit. And the idea is to pick the main 1 or 2 feelings that you want to come across. Is your business a traditional business? Is it a luxury business? Do you want to come across as like an approachable person, like maybe your service-based business? You know, are you a creative company? Do you make homemade kind of products? As you can see on this chart, depending on what you want to come across, you choose the type of font. So the top row, so serif, are the fonts that have little feet. So fonts that are serif fonts could, you know, when you look at them, you could feel like this is like just a straightforward run-of-the-mill business. It's a very traditional business. It could be a luxury business depending on the font that you choose. Sans serif literally means like without the little feet. If you choose a sans serif, you might come across as like cost effective, no nonsense kind of business, or very, very modern, depending on the sans serif font you might choose. There's handwriting fonts. If you use a handwriting font, you should use it very sparingly, um, because it's hard to read. Like there are some generations of people who can't read cursive writing, so beware about that. If you use handwriting, you could come off as approachable. You could come off as very chic, um, or like depending on the type of handwriting font, your products could look like they were homemade. There are also script type of fonts. Again, use this sparingly because they're hard to read sometimes. But if you saw this type of formal font in a wedding invitation, you would feel, okay, yeah, this is a very formal, like RSVP kind of thing, very sophisticated, romantic, feminine. These scripty fonts come across that way. And then there are brush type fonts. They can come off as very creative and casual and urban. So, depending on um, the emotions that you want to portray, that influences the type of font that you want to pick. And depending on the type of font, whether it's serif or handwriting or brush, then you can drill down into the very specific font or fonts you want to choose, depending on where you're going to use them. Um, just a couple of examples, real world examples. So, Coca-Cola has this handwriting font. It's very approachable. And then, like PayPal has a sans serif font, like there's no feet, there's no embellishments. It's just very no nonsense. And both these make sense. Coca-Cola, they're not uptight. They want things to be fun and playful. Like, yeah, approach us, like drink our cola, feel very relaxed. Whereas PayPal, they're dealing with money and it's, pretty no nonsense, straightforward kind of business. They don't want you to think that they're not taking it seriously. So this sans serif font is very appropriate for them. Does anybody have any questions about the font feeling match? Okay. So again, the goal is to pick two fonts. So why are we picking two fonts? It has to do a lot with this image. So I'd like you to just take 10 seconds and look at this image and let me know. You can do a thumbs up or a yes in the chat or a nod. Did this track for you? So did you read? You will read this first.
Yes.
Right. I see some nods. I've heard a yes. So chances are you did. And you're thinking, well, why? Why did I do that? My brain just did it. And this is what's called text hierarchy. So the biggest thing, our brain reads the biggest, brightest thing first. I was going to say that 3 times fast, but I could barely get it out once. So we'll try it again. Our brain reads the biggest, brightest thing first. And then it reads, the next thing that's biggest and brightest. And then it keeps going in size and brightness. So much like a newspaper, if you pick up a newspaper, you see the headline in these big boulders. And so what we want to do is define some styles. So we're going to pick a font and then we're going to say, okay, how do I want those most important words, that headline, how do I want that to look across everything, across my website, across my social media posts, if I have it even on a t-shirt, like what do I want that headline to always look like? And then if you catch folks' attention, they're going to stick around and they're going to keep reading. So then what is the kind of most important piece of information, your subheadline, what do you want that to look like? And then you also want to define, okay, what do I want my regular run-of-the-mill text to look like? And this is important to define these styles because remember, we're creating our logo and we only want to use the colors and the fonts that are present in that logo. So we want to peel the fonts we want to use in the logo. We want to peel those out and then define how we're going to use them across all of our other stuff. And by making this connection, it's like a subconscious visual connection about your unique combination of color, font, shape, and style. So if you saw another word written in Coca-Cola font, like enjoy or whatever, right? You would, and if you saw it in red, you'd be like, oh, well, that has to do with Coca-Cola. The word Coke's not there, the logo's not there. But if you saw that, you would immediately associate it with that. And that's by design. So there's a little bit of like reverse engineering, cross engineering happening here, where we're making choices and setting ourselves up so that when we create other things, it all references back. And then every time anybody sees anything again about you, they're gathering up that touch point, which reminds them of you, which pushes them further from being a stranger to a customer. That's a big piece of information there. Let me know if you have any questions with that. And if that makes sense. Okay. So we've covered fonts and feelings, and we talked about font styles. And I want to talk about font usability and accessibility. So do you all remember in your Canva file on page 2, you did it yourself or you worked with the GPT and you came up with this list of touch points, whether it's website, social media, product label, brochure, whatever it is. I want you to reference this again because I want to find out, where are you creating all of your stuff? Is it Google, Microsoft, Canva, Affinity, somewhere else? Like, where are you creating all of your stuff? And so I want you to just keep that in the back of your mind. So when you start to go and decide what fonts you're going to be using, you want to make sure that it is available or able to be uploaded to that place. So Canva, just as an example, you can upload fonts to Canva, but it's a Canva Pro feature. Like Canva Pro is only like 120 a year or something, good investment. Google doesn't really allow you to upload fonts. Google has a great font library. And a lot of Google fonts are available for website use. Like if you, depending on whatever website platform you use, a lot of Google fonts are available in Canva as well. You can download Google fonts onto your machine and so there's a good, Google is a great place to start. Canva is a great place to start. But I just want you to keep in mind, because I don't want to get you stuck where you pick a font that you absolutely love and then it's not available for your website or anything like that. Okay, so that's usability. And then the second part of this is accessibility. So readability is best. Make sure you can read it. Again, you can use a handwriting font if you want, or a brush font, but we just want to make sure that it is actually very readable, and readable when it's big and readable when it's small. You might have to test that out. And consider spacing and weight. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? So there's the word font. There's also something called like a font family, which is a group of font weights. So weight means bold, medium, regular, etc. Some fonts have one weight. They have, this is the font, this is what it looks like. You can't make it bold, you can't make it italic. There's nothing, there's only one weight. Some fonts, like this one, screen Nunito, this is a Google font that's great. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weights. So if you choose the font, like let's say you're going to have Nunito as part of your logo, you can actually use any of those weights because there's still the visual reference of the shape of the letter of the font that's in your logo. So it gives you some more creative flexibility. And creative flexibility is also why I want you to choose 2 fonts. I want you to have 2 fonts in your logo so that when you're creating things, you have those 2 fonts and all the weight of those 2 fonts to choose from. If you have 1 font in your logo and 1 weight with that font, like you can't make it bold or italic or anything, like to get that connection from all of your other channels, you're stuck. So I want you to give yourself some more creative room and flexibility. Okay, so again, I want you to think about where are you using your font and then the accessibility of it. Make sure it's readable. Having some multiple weights makes a lot of sense. In the last cohort, some folks had asked me about font licensing. And so I believe I left you a note. Yes. In your, this is your Google brand kit. I left you some reference articles about that. And so you can read more about licensing and things like that. So we are getting close to the make it time. And if you can open up your Canva files to page 9. I've left you a page here where you're going to record your decision. So you're going to have your 2 fonts, and you're going to decide what your headings and your subheadings and your body text, and maybe even an accent if you want. You're going to decide, you're going to change this to be exactly what you want. And I've given you a couple of tools. So first off is the font feeling match. So pick 2 to 3 feelings. You can basically take these circles and put them, wherever you want, and then note what kind of fonts they fall under. And then again, there's a link to Google Fonts and Canva article about fonts. And then this, I left you a play page where you can decide, because like sometimes you're like, okay, I know I want a handwriting font, but is it this one or this one? So I left you a page where you can play around. And if you're in Canva playing around with fonts, you click the font here and you'll notice that the headings, serif, sans serif, handwriting, script, and brush are exactly the same. You can find them here, handwriting, sans serif, there's a few extra, but brush, you can see that they're there. So you can start there. Let's say you wanted to start with some sans serif fonts. You can start to look through. Any fonts that have an arrow like this means there's multiple weights, and that's great. If there's no arrow, it means there's no way to change it. You can't make it bold or italic or whatever, and I would stay away from that. But have a look and start playing, and remember to check if the font you want is available where you make things. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation section, and I want to give you some make it time, so I'm going to stop recording.